Okay, so you know why we're writing. So let's talk about the how behind getting this writing done. Remember that you want to be what's called analytical. So the point of writing this essay is to show me that you can break ideas, in this case, literary terms, down into smaller parts and explain why the author is using certain types of language. So if you look on your original handout, you'll see that here in the blank, here's where you're going to choose a rhetorical device. And this blank can be any of those literary terms and devices that we talked about. So here in this line, you're going to either use simile, metaphor, personification, repetition. It's going to depend on which passage or citation from the I Have a Dream speech you are going to analyze, break down, and explain. Now, in this blank, the second blank, here you are going to think about a big idea. So how does the language help readers understand the negative effects of discrimination or the pain associated with segregation and discrimination? And that's what you're going to analyze in your paragraph. So what I've done here is I've taken the topic sentence. Everyone basically has the same topic sentence. What's different is what you fill the blanks in. So here I made this capital simply for presentation purposes. You are not going to capitalize in your paragraph. But let's say we want to use a passage that has hyperbole. You are going to write hyperbole on that first blank. Okay. Now, what you had to infer or interpret or what you're going to explain is what I've written here in the beginning that's in bold. And then I stopped, or in caps, I should say, sorry. And I stopped capitalizing. I was capitalizing just to show you what I had written. So we have filled in the blanks now. Martin Luther King's use of hyperbole in his I Have a Dream speech helps readers to understand the pain and isolation caused by segregation and racism in the Black community. So that's my inference about why he's using hyperbole, and I'm going to explain that in more depth in the body of my paragraph. Now I know that I can also talk about pain and isolation that's caused by segregation and racism using the play A Raisin in the Sun, because there are lots of moments where the characters feel pain and isolation. Now, I believe the next lines or the next lettered lines are fairly self-explanatory. So what you want to do is you want to go through and you want to make sure you have a sentence for each letter. At least one sentence. So for line A, you're going to cite the passage exactly the way it's written, and you're going to just simply restate the rhetorical device, so hyperbole. For letter B, you're going to explain the type of language. You have to put this in your own words. Explain that why it's a hyperbole, why it's a simile, why Martin Luther King has chosen to make this comparison or to exaggerate the language in this way or to repeat the words. You have to explain that. You're going to explain the emotion behind those words. You know, when you hear things like seared in the flames, why does that allow you to feel pain? Explain that, break it down into smaller pieces. Think about what fire does to someone. Think about what you feel every time you hear a certain word repeated, if he's repeating those words, if you're doing repetition. So it's really going to depend on the passage that you chose to focus your paragraph on. Then you want to get to the big idea about why and how the language helps us to see this point that you put here. So if we're going to be talking about why the language shows us the pain and isolation. So if you're doing the simile about being on a deserted island in the sea of prosperity. You want to break that down. Why would that cause someone to feel pain and feel isolated from the society that they live in? These are your ideas. Just present them clearly. Okay? So remember, writing an essay is about presenting your ideas. Now, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to introduce this idea as it relates to A Raisin in the Sun. So how do the characters from A Raisin in the Sun also feel isolated and pain based on the segregation that they're facing? Go back into the play, find a citation, put it in here, and then explain why the characters are feeling isolated and why it's important for both Martin Luther King and Lorraine Hainsbury to bring this pain and isolation to their audiences. If you have any questions, please post them to the Google Classroom, and I will answer them there, because chances are if you have a question, other people in class have a question, and that way we have one space where everyone can see the answers to all the different questions. Thanks, guys.